tackles the mundane, funny, heartwarming ways, and just kind of everything about our giant industry of smut. This week's guest is Hunter S. Johnson. I'm so excited to be back. Last week's pod was the most listened to podcast, to obvious reasons, with Lily Kate's Terrace Manifesto and me being a subject of the BBC article. So I'm going to go into a little bit of that today before we get into the pod. But first, if you want to support the podcast, you can become a monthly member of my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Chelsea Poe. Again, that's patreon.com/Chelsea Poe. Last week was really unreal. It was really, really intense. I did not expect this to blow up into a global story and to be interviewed and having journalists listening to this podcast pulling quotes. So it's been a very interesting week. I really, truly believe that Lily Kate has been mostly held accountable. I think being completely deplatformed is a really good way for people to hold people accountable, and with them retracting their statements. I'm assuming there might be legal consequences going on that we're not aware of, but it seems like there was legitimate consequences, and the BBC removed them from at least the English version. And I truly feel like things are moving in a right direction on holding them accountable. I would love for my interview with Caroline Lowbridge to be released. I hold no real ill will to her. She seemed genuinely nice. It was a very uncomfortable interview for me because of the questioning, but I'm not calling for anyone to lose their job or to get in trouble or reprimanded, other than the person who shared honest terroristic threats. This podcast is a direct result of the uncomfortable interview I had there, where I just felt like I was trying to be baited the entire interview. So I'm really happy at least something came positive out of this. This is the second last episode of the season. Next week, we are wrapping the season with the season finale with April Flores, a complete icon. I'm a huge Katie Nolan fan from her podcast Sports, and something she did on that a lot was doing mental health check-ins. And I want to start doing that on here because this last week has been truly unreal. And I didn't feel normal until yesterday. Just having such a amount of just things directed your way, whether it's people thinking that I'm trying to take on the BBC and trying to motivate me to do that, or people misgendering me on turf stuff on Twitter. I just feel like it's really important to talk about how overwhelming that stuff can be and how I don't think anyone is prepared to handle all that media backlash. So for my own mental health, I've been essentially blocking anyone who doesn't have a real name or real photo, just because I don't feel like that's a real honest conversation, because they're not even arguing with you or even critiquing you from a real place that they're willing to show as much as not quite as much as I'm willing to show, obviously, but at least just being on the same level and just having an honest and good conversation. So that's really helped my mental health, and meditation has really helped, but this stuff's really hard. And I know I'm not the only sex worker who is going through hard things and having difficulties. And I just want to say it's okay to be stressed out and feel like stuff is hard sometimes. I think that's why it's so important to have a therapist, and I have a hell of a therapy session coming up, so I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, I think that's the first mental health check-in. And yeah, I'm going to keep doing this more because I think mental health, and especially mental health of performers, needs to be talked about. So today, I'm so excited for you to listen to my interview with fellow Michigander, Hunter S. Johnson. We go into way too much talking about Grand Rapids and geography of Grand Rapids. We talk about how he made the jump to Berlin, how awkward transsexual in the Midwest, and huge vegan. I really hope you enjoy am with Hunter S. Johnson today. We have known of each other for an extremely long time. I've known of you since I literally was camming on the west side of Grand Rapids. And
Same. Literally
wait,
camping on the west side of Grand Rapids.
were you actually on the west side?
Okay, well, I mean, what is Division Street? Is that west side? Because I do not remember my Grand Rapids anymore.
No, the west side is like, do you know where like the YMCA and Big Boy is?
Yes.
That's the west side. Anything on that side of the river, like until you get to almost like Standale or Allendale.
Gotcha.
Well, first off, are you from Grand Rapids or
Holland?
I
was born in Grand Rapids, lived in Wyoming for the first 12 years of my life, and there's
so
really
like
no
distinction. Suburb, yeah.
There's no distinction. They're all trash. It's all trash.
Yeah, Wyoming is definitely the suburb that gets the most hate around West Michigan. I was born in Grand Rapids, but I grew up in Holland until I think I was in like second or third grade and lived between Holland and Grand Rapids for basically until I moved. So I feel like it's equally both, but I have more family in Holland now.
How long were you there for?
My whole life until I was 22 when I moved here.
Assumedly, that's a Dutch flag in the background I'm seeing as well, right?
Yeah, I used it for last year for AVN, which you were also nominated for. Wait, no, you were nominated 2 years ago.
Exactly. 2 years ago. Oh God, what a cool but intensely stressful experience.
It is. So yeah, for last year, because it was at home, I did decrim now on the Dutch flag, and now I have a Dutch flag. So I'm like, I'll just throw it up. It's fine.
Don't you love how growing up anywhere near Grand Rapids gives you this feeling of being closer to Amsterdam? Like, anytime I go to the Netherlands, I'm like, oh, okay, I know this culture.
Yeah, like for me, are you Dutch, by the way?
Not even a little bit, which is the great part.
Oh, are you like one of those Polish people from Grand Rapids then?
Excuse me.
I'm just wondering. Those are like the two options.
From Grand Rapids. I'm actually wildly enough. So like my mom's side of the family is completely from Kansas. Like, I mean, for generations, my dad's side is more from like mid Michigan, but going back from both sides, it's like it's all Czech and German. Like, I mean, stupidly German. We have family from Berlin. In what period of time, I will not tell you, because it's the period of time that nobody likes to talk about.
So yeah, so you live in Berlin now, so I guess it came full circle.
In a better way than it was back then. Yep.
Yeah, the whole like West Michigan Netherlands connection is so weird because there's so much I didn't realize until I went to Amsterdam. That's like, oh, this is like stuff I grew up with, and just like seeing people that look like my cousins and stuff, and seeing people that look like people I went to school with, and all the same last names.
The van everything. This is what is so wild to me. It's like the same sort of like weird conservatism lives in Grand Rapids that lives in the Netherlands. Like, kind of just live your life, but live it by God's rules. It's so prevalent in Grand Rapids everywhere. And I think the same vibe is.
It's really intense in Grand Rapids because I feel like it's all. I've actually looked into this history lately because. So being from West Michigan and being trans and like into like doing alternative art and porn and stuff, I was just like, oh, my culture doesn't apply to any of this at all. I'm just like, it has nothing to do with it. Then I went to Amsterdam and everything's sex work, everything's weed, everything's all the things I literally like make up my personality essentially. And I was just like, oh, wow, I can actually have this be part of my personality. And this was also shortly after I came out to all my family as a sex worker. And for me, that was like a really big thing, just to be like, oh, there's actual Dutch culture that's like pro sex work and not just completely like Betsy DeVos and shit like that.
Because, American style conservatism.
Yeah, because that's all West Michigan really is. I mean, I don't think Holland, Michigan ever had a Democrat run. It's always only Republicans.
I mean, back to the Amway. I mean, it's all been controlled by the Amway founders, the DeVosses, and the Van Andels since like the 40s. And I mean, they have like literally every bit of politics from that area, including how we deal with sexuality, how we deal with drugs, how we deal with everything, follows the Amway model of conservative religion, Christianity, and politics. They really went balls out on the whole. Let's fuck up liberal people's lives.
Yeah, it's just so evangelical. And yeah, I grew up completely separated from churches and stuff because both my parents were atheists. So I think particularly being in that environment, it just felt very like just being out of it, you know, especially in like the
That's a
suburbs like Jenison and Granville are just so ultra conservative.
that's a question though. Since both your parents were atheists, do you feel like you had an easier like entry into the sex work world? Do you feel as though you had less friction because of it, or did your parents still have sort of the same basic issues?
Um, my dad was like kind of in and out of poverty my whole adulthood. He ultimately passed away, I think 5 years ago now or something like that, while being homeless. So he wasn't really much involved, more than just being like, oh, you're following art stuff. I support you doing that. You need to do what you're going to do. And my mom kind of had the basic Holland, Michigan reaction of, oh my God, you're going to do meth. You're going to do this, this, and this. And it's just
Yeah,
like, no. And I think now she's really come around on it more, but I think it's still definitely a little bit of an issue. But I was really lucky to win a trophy last week, or I guess it was last month now in LA. And everyone came out of the fucking woodwork to be like, oh,
like
we
old
support
friends, you'd
you.
be like, "Oh
Like
man, that's so."
friends, family, people I went to elementary school with, ex-girlfriends. Like, so now I'm like, oh wow, there's all these people that care. So I think I'm like kind of on a high from that still. But yeah, it is really disappointing that there's not like anywhere in Grand Rapids that I can screen my films, or in Holland I could screen my films. And yeah, I've been involved with the Grand Rapids Feminist Porn Film Festival a few times there. But
There's
even
a Grand
that,
Rapids Feminist Porn Film Festival.
yeah, I did panels there twice.
Is it 5 people?
Oh no, it's at the Wealthy Theater actually. This is all
Oh
inside
shit.
Grand Rapids baseball, but like maybe the Grand
Yeah, exactly.
Rapidians
Yeah,
gonna
clear.
gonna run with this. I don't care because people talk about LA this way.
Thank you. There's going to be like 2 Grand Rapids listeners out there that are just like salivating in their earbuds, going, "Oh my god, talk more about wealthy theater." Yeah, 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 yeah. Is it in East Town?
Yeah, yeah. So there was like a screening there, and I did I talked about stuff, but I forget that I was in Michigan. So I was talking about a festival in New York, and then I was like, oh yeah, then there's like just like open sex can happen, and there's like orgies going on, and everyone in the room is just like mouth open, a gate being like
Oh,
because it was just like a
please
panel on
no.
like general like trans people in film.
Do you find that the feminist film festival there, like what kind of feminism do you find from them? Is it like do you find a certain sort of judgmental feminism, or is it like, because me, I see the Berlin feminism as like open to everything, feel what you want, but I feel like sometimes American feminism can get that, especially small town American feminism can get that sort of like, well, I don't know about that
I
vibe.
mean, I've only stayed for two panels. Our friend Bryn, who is an amazing
Bryn!
porn performer, they
Yeah.
spoke before me, and I was like, hell yeah, there's like a sex worker stripper speaking, and I'm like, hell yeah. And then the next panel was mine, and then I got the fuck out of there basically, because I'm just like, I'm fine. It's Grand Rapids, so I had like exes working different booths and stuff, so that was a little
Yep.
bit of a thing. But it seemed the first, I don't know if it still exists, but like the first few times it was pretty okay. But also, it's a feminist like film festival. I don't think they had enough
It's gonna be
local
good.
artists.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was kind of an issue where I think if you're doing a city's film festival, you really need to bring in the local community and really bring in local artists. And I feel like that's
Yes.
something so many film festivals fail at.
I moved down to Grand Rapids to find my sex worker porn world. I moved down there to like broaden my horizons because I was living up in Traverse City for the majority of my life, right? And
Yeah.
people had told me, no joke, this is what people said. Yeah, man, you should go to Grand Rapids. It's like the Berlin of Michigan. And I
Because
fucking
it's literally like only me and Bryn making stuff, and like
I,
we weren't even making stuff together at that point.
nope, nope. And me as like, the little small town boy with big eyes. I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
really? That sounds great. Go down to Grand Rapids, find out it's like at least 80% churches.
Oh yeah. I mean, just the amount of churches I grew up around, you just don't see that anywhere else in the world. There was like
No,
100
no.
churches in a square mile of my house. Like
Churches and
literally.
craft breweries and breweries that work churches and churches that sometimes serve craft beer. It's kind
Yeah,
of a
that's kind of the whole gimmick on Holland and Grand Rapids, just craft beer in religion.
But I had so when I moved down there, that was when I really cut my teeth in the camming game because like that's when I got my start in porn. When I was 18, I was doing this. Like I'd worked for Michael Moore on film
Oh,
Capitalism Love
really?
Story. Yeah, that's how
Oh
I
yeah,
got
I
my
was
start in
wondering.
film. Yeah, so like I was going to college and he was hiring for his film for some interns, and I'd always want to do film. And through a friend of a friend, I got in as an intern, and then ended up working on the entire production all the way up to production assistant. And it was
What film was
like
it?
Capitalism, a Love Story, which was
Mm,
also a
I've watched
huge
that a
deal.
million times. Yeah.
You like it? Yeah,
Yeah.
man. That's like,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like some stuff with Michael Moore, I'm a little bit like, all right.
yeah,
But
yeah.
also like some of it, I'm just like, yeah, you're from Michigan. You understand this shit. You're from Flint. You get what it's like.
My first girlfriend's parents worked with him in his early days, and even they said he was an asshole. Like everybody who knows him, he's an asshole, but
I
he's a
could see that.
don. Like I'm still so thankful to him for giving me my first opportunity. Like without being in that production, I wouldn't have moved to Europe. I wouldn't have met the people I met.
Mm.
I was in the Young Republicans until I was like
Oh,
17.
really? You did that
Yeah, no
whole
shit.
thing?
Well, I was homeschooled for a good 4 years.
Oh, that
Yeah, so
makes
I come from
sense.
like deep Baptist, hardcore Christian upbringing, very, very, very like conservative Republican parenting, family life, and like getting to work on that, getting to work with all these like new people, like being 18, first going to college, and then finally starting to meet all these people with completely different ways of thinking. It was opening so many doors for me. You know what I mean? Like that was just so freeing. So yeah,
Did you
yeah.
go to
I
school in
totally
Grand Rapids or did you go to another place in Michigan?
I ended up doing 2 years at Grand Valley. 1 year I
Okay.
did up in Traverse City, and then the other year I did um, over the internet while I was here in Berlin. So, and then
Oh,
after that, I decided, why the fuck am I wasting my money on this?
shout out Campus View Apartments. It's where I
Woo!
started camming.
Oh my god, dude, I got so lucky when I moved down though. There are these like artist only apartments on Division where they were trying to gentrify the shit out of that that really let's say
Yeah, like by where
interesting area.
Skeletones was and stuff. Like
Yeah, right down by the
Skeletones
police
mixtape. Yeah.
station. Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. So they were trying to gentrify the shit out of it. They're bringing it was back in the good old hipster, 2012 days where you could, I don't know, have some random t-shirt printing shop
I
down
love
there and it
that.
would actually make money, right?
I mean, that
So
was the thing about Grand Rapids is everything was so cheap
yeah,
that the art scene was thriving because you could be in a local band and make a living off of that. Or like with camming, I could get my rent paid in a night,
we
you know?
made so much money with camming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I swear to God, and that was all we did. We got a really nice apartment set up like, and it was for two people. I went down there with my former partner. Like we kind of, let's say, escaped Traverse City
Mm-hmm.
together. We both like decided after a while. I got back from living in Dublin, met this person. Like I'd worked in porn before, and that kind of like opened doors for both of us being like, hey, we're wildly sexual people. Let's do this thing together. We can make this happen. And it was fucking great. Like we really, really ran a camming business. You know what I mean? Like every day was studying the cams, who's doing what, how do we run games, what kind of games we want to do, when do we want to do our stuff, how do we set up, like we set up an actual studio and everything.
Mm-hmm.
God, and it works. Like, you know what I mean? We'd work a good 5 hours a day and make so much fucking money.
Yeah,
I
truly.
just,
Like
yeah.
you were on Kink Live back then, right?
Mm-mm.
What were you
Chatterbait.
on? Oh,
Chatterbait.
really?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We did Chatterbait like for a good 2 years, and like we're always in at least the top page, if not like the top 10 or 20. It was a full time job for us.
Wow. Yeah, I was doing full-time camming. I was also like Grand Rapids is, I would say, a pretty big party city. Like everyone goes out there all the time.
Yes. Yep.
So like my schedule was so fucked up because I would be like, okay, Thursday, half off drinks at the gay bar. Everyone's gonna be there. I'm going there. Friday, I'm going to the gay bar. Saturday, I'm going to a few bars. And then everything else around my week was like, okay, I'm gonna cam so I can get to do that. Basically, that was really my mindset when I was first like an adult there, when I was like 19, 20, 21, where I'm just like, I felt like I was truly having like a 9 to 5 job, but doing like fucking weird hours where I wake up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day
That is
for this.
camming though, isn't it? Like it's literally, it's more than 9 to 5. Like you're sitting there and you're, while eating your cereal, you're like texting people, making sure
Mm-hmm.
people are going to be there for your show later on. Also, you're reminding me of this. I think you're actually the first person I ever identified in my head as a porn star. I remember I was hanging out with Bryn back then, and I was so like, I was, she's telling me, I'm like, oh, I just did this film called, what was it called? Across America, or what was it?
Oh, Queer Porn Americana. Yeah, Brendan and I
Queer
produced it
porn.
together.
And I knew nothing about queerness at this point. I was like trying to
Oh
learn
shit.
so hard. And I was just so like, oh my God, this person's amazing. This person's doing, it's a porn star doing queer porn Americana. That sounds so huge. And I tried to play it up to Bryn, like, oh, yeah, that sounds cool. In my head, I'm like, I go, oh my God, what if we get to meet this Chelsea Poe person?
Literally, if you were there just like a year or two earlier asking, I was like literally felt like I was doing nothing. I would just was like, okay, I flew out to California twice. I was able to make stuff. And then it was just basically like, okay, you're just a cam girl at home and you just like have regular ass roommates and stuff, you know?
Back then, though, being a cam girl, I don't know, man. I mean, like, I feel like, what year was this? Like 2016, you said?
I
2000?
moved at the end of 2013 to
20,
California.
20 camming in 2013 is totally different than it is today. Like it was such a smaller group of people, and
Yeah.
doing porn back then is such a wildly different thing, especially for being anyone who does porn from Michigan. How many of us are there? There's like 20, maybe.
Yeah, there's still not very many. There's one really famous trans girl from I think Detroit.
Yeah,
What's her name? She used to have a Miley haircut, and I thought she was
yeah.
gay, and then I found out she was very not gay. I'm like, oh, the haircut fooled me. Why am I blanking on her name?
Is she still performing?
Yes, she is. Okay, you can continue. I can figure it
You can look
out.
it up. Yeah, yeah. I feel like we should at some point. I really hope if I ever get the chance to come to LA or we all end up at the AVNs or something, we should have like a Michigan contingent of sex workers. And I don't know, we would all eat pasties. Everybody's just eating
Oh, I
pasties.
want conies. I miss conies more than anything.
Fuck a
Pasties or
coney. That
whatever,
is
because
not,
I'm not Polish, so like I'll fuck with a pasty or a
not
kielbasa.
even it's Finnish. It is a Finnish. You're not
See,
from Northern Michigan. This is
see, yeah, that's a big difference. Like
yep.
I'm 2.5 hours from Chicago. You're like up there with all like,
Way the fuck up there, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I had a roommate
Goodness.
from the UP, the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. It's just truly a whole different fucking world.
Honest to God, it's wild. The accents, the experiences. Get this. I'm dating someone now for a year that I met in Berlin. She's from Petoskey. Like she's been to my high
That's
school.
the funniest shit that you move across the world and you're like, oh yeah, I'm dating a girl from Petoskey. Like, what the? That's ridiculous.
Her mom
Yeah,
goes out with my mom every once in a while. They know each other for years. Yeah, no, they're real nice people.
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it's a wild experience. Yeah, at the time though, were you camming on Kink Live with Bryn at the time or no?
Brandon and I, we talked about camming on Chatterbait a few times, but like really, it ended up never panning out. I think Brandon just kept
Mm,
on stripping at the time, or did we? I don't know. We were kind of like starting around that time, starting to bring in thirds and special partner,
mm.
special guest stars and stuff like that. But something with Brandon never worked out. I think she had her own thing going on with the Kink Live. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on Kink Live at the time, and just
What's
because the
what's
price of living was so low that I literally paid for enough money to come out here after like 2 months of camming.
No shit. Okay, how much does it cost? Like when you let's I want to talk about that for a second because I'm super interested in like the entire concept of moving out to California for porn, right? Like
Yes.
How much did it cost you to get out there to start with, like just for startup living, everything?
I probably only 2 grand, honestly. So I
No
at
shit.
the time my rent was 550, so I paid that and the deposit. So it was like 1100. I guess I paid for my ticket and my cat's ticket, so that was probably another 400. And then I
Yeah.
literally just moved out here with 2 suitcases, and
Yep. Makes sense.
I was like, my goal of moving out here, I'm like, maybe it'll work out 6 months. I could just move back home. This whole thing that it all worked out is kind of
What was
wild,
the
to be
moment where it
honest.
figured out that like you figured out it had worked out for you? You know what I mean? Like, was there a bit of doubt, or did it just flow perfectly?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was because I moved out here because I was doing Kink Live. And then I was like, oh, I'm a BDSM performer. I'm a submissive. And Kink.com's like, oh, if you come out here, you can get more work. You can do all
Oh, fuck
this.
yeah.
So you can see where this is going, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
Especially the
Kink.com,
content.
then when I come out here, they're like, oh, you're a Dom and a top, right? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, we can't work with you then.
Wait,
So I
what?
was like, what the fuck? But at the same time, I was becoming closer with like Courtney at Trouble Films and stuff. And they're like, oh, do you want to like try to make this narrative movie together? Fucking Mystic. And I did it. And that was everything ever since has kind of just been
So that was
because of
kind of
fucking
like
Mystic.
the moment for you was meeting Courtney and continuing on with that stuff.
Yeah, when fucking Mystic came out, my life
Yeah.
literally changed. Like nothing before, even my first year in California, I'd maybe go on a trip once every few months. Ever since, it's been full blown porn star shit
Like the
happening all the
actual
time.
porn star life. Like you'll just get booked to go somewhere, and that's your next week. Is like, all right, I'm going to
Yeah.
this place.
Yeah, that
Do you
literally
mind?
started happening
Like,
like
do
the
you
week
find that it's
after.
stressful, or
Um,
like,
I think it is stressful. I think it's definitely wound down now that there's less studio work,
mm,
but I just want to produce shit with like you get it. You're from Grand Rapids. So it's like there's this whole punk ethic of like, oh yeah, just get your friends, have them come over. We'll make some art and then we'll like, play a show or release this thing. So that's kind of always been my whole ethic with making porn. Do you kind of
this
have
is
that same vibe?
this is where I'd like to get, but I don't know, something's holding me back because like I have this thing of I'm working on my second X Confessions film right now. We're going to be
Mm,
shooting on December 11th, and like um, when I moved to Berlin, I moved to Berlin with a specific intention of building connections in the porn scene and starting to
hmm
make the porn that I want to see, like this more artistic. Back then, I didn't think of it as anything ethically inclined. Now I've kind of
hmm
found that I have a little bit more. Well, I found that I had a little bit more reason now that I'm actually wanting to eventually start a website. I'm finding that the ethics become less important. The money becomes more important because that's what happens when you have to work under capitalism. You need to think about the money. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm working on my second one now, and I've written so many scripts and I have so many ideas for like little 200 euro films that I could produce. I have I have an entire studio's worth of equipment, and then when I go to do it, I flake at the last minute. I go, oh no, it's fine. I should sit on the couch. You're right. I used to be this way. I used to be like, let's go shoot something and a couple of friends. Now I feel like I just need to overcome that indie hump. Do you know what I mean? Just that
Yeah.
call up some friends, have them fuck on the couch, get out my get out my steady cam and practice with
hmm
it vibe.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you kind of have to do. I mean, like the whole thing that brings me back to porn, it's not like, oh, I get to live out my fantasies, all that shit, making a living. It's not really that. It's just like that creative feeling is what I really care about. That you can just like get in a room and then leave with like a piece of film or art or whatever. It's like the same as being in a band. When I played in a bunch of bands growing up, like different hardcore and shit. And like that's the thing that I missed from being in bands for a while when I got out of that. And I feel like in porn, I definitely have the same feeling now, where it's just like you just know you created a thing with 4 other people or 3 other people.
And the positive feedback that you get from it, I really appreciate that. In porn, if I would have tried to do like movie making proper, I would be still a production assistant with absolutely zero names
Mhm.
to my name. In porn, I can just go and do shit and get positive feedback, like actual
Yep.
critical acclaim, and people telling me that's either good or bad. Because
Yeah.
in porn, you can just rise up to whatever level you want to so quickly.
Yeah, I think you can. I think the only hard thing about porn is it's like a lot of other entertainment industries. There's a million people trying to also do that.
I think so.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think
That's right.
particularly
Yeah.
with being a trans woman, like there were like a fucking 1,000 girls who started at the same time as me, and now there's like four left.
You know, this is an experience I have zero. Well, this is a part of the porn industry that I have zero experience with because, like, I'm only used to the European Berlin scene, which I think you have
Mhm.
a little bit of an idea of, but here
Yeah,
it's so small. Like, we
it
haven't
is.
grown as a group in Berlin, like the porn scene here, more than two people in the past, like, 3 or 4 years. Like, we are begging for more people to join our little group. I assume over the LA scene is completely different.
Well, I'm not in LA. I'm in SF.
Well, as okay, yeah, even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. I think the Berlin porn scene really mirrors what SF used to be, maybe like 10 years ago, something like that, when there was just the start of companies like Crash Pad and Trouble Films and stuff, and it was still so small and localized. I just don't know what the Berlin porn scene is going to become because I don't know how much of the pandemic has gotten rid of all the accessible like housing and stuff, because I know the rents have gone up a lot in Berlin since, and I just don't know if there's going to be like that push that people feel like they can go there and, you know,
I
continue to
think
be a porn star and live cheaply.
I think that'll always be a certain bit of a thing here because Berlin is the type of city I think a lot like San Fran that like it has a certain call. It has a certain people know it as a sexual city. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's why
Yeah.
I ended up here because I knew it as a sexual city. You always have people who, even if they don't come here for porn, they meet people who are in porn.
Yeah.
And those people give them a positive experience of it, which opens them up to doing it. So you have more people like switching careers and just being interested in maybe even doing it as a sideline job. Like, oh, I'm sure I'll join this thing. I'm sure I'll play in your porn.
I think the biggest thing about porn in Berlin that's so different is that there's people doing it just for the art. And that doesn't
Yep.
really happen in the United States. And the United States is so capital driven.
Capital driven and also the morals of it mean that if you're going to do it, you need to go in whole hog because it's not
Yeah.
worth it without the capital because you will be socially excluded for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Yeah. I
here, like I told my daytime job that I do to like work on my visa, I told my bosses in my first interview that I do porn. They're like, okay, cool. We got a guy who works in a rock band, so we got a rock star. Now we got a porn star. And my bosses, I did an interview, and my bosses saw it on Facebook, and I come in the next day, and they're like, "Oh, Hunter, yeah, cool name, huh?" Like, this is Berlin, and that's like a very normal
yeah,
conservative
it really
job. Do you know
is.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think Europe just views porn as another medium. And that's like the biggest thing that's mind blowing is there's not all this bullshit that kind of goes with it. Like people are like, oh yeah, porn exists. It's okay. Here, there's still like this whole thing of like, oh, you're a porn star. Well, I could do that too. I could be the biggest porn star in the world. It's like
that's some
going to
pure
an NBA
American
player and
bullshit,
being
though,
like,
right?
LeBron, you're good, but did you see what
Or
I
a
did in high
doctor.
school? You don't know.
Do you find
Like,
that
it's
like
just truly ridiculous.
the vibe when I was in Grand Rapids though, like it really was quite harmful because like I was so proud of what I was doing with Chad. Like, I
Mhm.
was so proud of what I was
Yeah.
achieving. And we couldn't tell fucking anyone. The few people we did tell were like either kind of like they were nice and they were young people, you know what I mean? They're young, open
Yeah.
people. They were nice enough about it where they're like, oh, okay, but like, you know, you're not gonna get any jobs, right? Or they were like,
Yeah.
you guys okay? Do you need help? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's definitely a thing in Grand Rapids because it's, I think, a thing I've had to unlearn a lot since moving from the Midwest and particularly just like that area is there's so much of this, like, you have to be polite no matter what. And just like overly being nice, even if you're like, oh, I heavily disagree with something.
Well, you worked your way out of it. Please tell me how.
Barely. My partner gives me shit about it so much. Like, we'll go to a restaurant and they'll mess up our order. I'm like, oh no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Or even this like awful BBC article I got interviewed for right after I was like, I should send the interviewer an email and be like, hey, I didn't feel really uncomfortable with some of those questions. But then I was like, no, I shouldn't do that. She's just doing her job. Like,
It's
I
like
just have that mindset and it sucks at times.
it's little socialized self depowerment, like taking away your self worth through this socialization of like, Oh, I don't need to bother anyone. I'm not important enough for that.
I mean, I think that's a major problem with like the whole Dutch culture, particularly in West Michigan. And I was actually just talking to someone about this today. There, you probably know Grand Rapids got to name the most depressed city in the United States, right?
I did not. That's
Oh yeah,
amazing.
that happened 2 years ago. Yeah, yeah, we're the
I'm
most
so
depressed city. So
I'm so happy with that.
yeah, so like I see a lot of depression in my family, and there's like been a lot of like suicidal ideation. There's been a few suicides and stuff, but it's all because of this Dutch mindset of like, I'm just gonna suffer alone. I don't want to be a burden on anyone. I don't want to harm anyone else. I'm just gonna keep it inside, internalize it. And like just trying to unlearn that stuff's so important because you're like so just brought up in it. And that's just kind of how you normally handle any bullshit that happens. Did you feel
And that
that?
is for me, it's I can't really like say much to the Dutch mindset in my family because we didn't have that. We had more of just the waspy sort of push things under the rug. My entire both sides of my family had heavy alcoholism to the point of
Mm.
deaths and endless wrecked cars sort of thing, and nobody talked about it because that's not a
Oh,
thing you talk about. Do you know what I mean? Like only with time that I find out all of the things that happen. You're like, oh yeah, that's why we're all fucked up. No,
yeah.
so I didn't really come. I came out to my mom with sex work 2 years ago. My mom's been divorced from my dad for a long time. We've kind of had our reckoning since childhood because she was a terrible mother
Mm-hmm.
growing as a child, but has turned into an okay, like adult mother, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And she was incredibly accepting. She was very much like, what did she say? She's like, well, you're not fucking anybody without a condom, are you? I'm like, well, sometimes.
Oh my God.
She's like, all right, well, just be careful.
Yeah,
Like
I feel like my family would never be that bold. They would just be like, "Oh, I don't know about
no,
that. We don't do that in Holland." Like literally, that's just like, "Oh,
that's
I don't know what people in Holland would think about that."
you're literally like when you say that, oh, I don't know about that. I'm picturing some guy that I would tell that to in a bar, right? Like, let's say I'm getting drunk
Yeah.
with someone and I say, and they're like, well, what do you do? Oh, well, I do porn. Oh, well, I don't know about all that. Like, that is just
Yeah.
the so typical Holland answer
Yeah.
to anything like that.
Yep,
Oh my God. Okay.
100%. It's
I
not
have
trying to
the
be
best
overly
story.
judgmental, just but being like, "Oh, wow."
I have the absolute best story for you. You're going to love this,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
Okay.
I'm all
So
about it.
in Grand Rapids, I was working at this
Mhm.
place, and me and
What
my
place?
girlfriend back
Can
then,
you name drop?
nah, it's not worth it. It was some brewery or another. I was working at some
Oh, the
brewery.
one brewery, of
Oh,
course.
right, you know that brewery. Yeah. The one brewery in Grand Rapids. Because I love this. So like when Chelsea came to visit me once in
Mhm.
Berlin, we were hanging out at my place. And I just like I was talking to I think it was you and Courtney. I go, yeah,
Yeah.
I work at a brewery. And Chelsea just like you'd been so polite. You're like, I go, I work at a brewery, and you go, of fucking course, and just scream it out, and everybody looks at you. You're like, he's from Grand Rapids. Of course, he's working at a brewery.
It's
I
like the
still
only job there.
I still tell people about that. I'm like, yeah, the only other person from Grand Rapids figured it out.
My
Anyway,
parents own a bar there, like everyone
oh
does.
shit, oh
Yeah, in
nice.
Holland, yeah.
Okay, so we're out at this bar, and I'd
Mhm.
invited two of my male coworkers, both of whom were born in Grand Rapids, one of whom was banned something something. So they were both hard Dutch. I mean, very hard Dutch. And we're all getting drunk, and my girlfriend starts like texting me. She's like, "They're really hot," and I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'd love to fuck all three of you," and I'm like, "Okay." So we
That's
just start.
so bold in Grand Rapids
Oh,
terms. Like if a threesome happens, it's thought of as like the craziest thing.
so we're drinking, and me and her are texting. I'm like, well, how do you want to introduce this? I'm all about it. I'm like, fuck yeah. She's like, I don't know. Let's do. And she does it in like the best way possible. Just goes, so guys, can I suck all your cocks? And like we've been, like there've been flirty vibes all through the night. So like they kind of look at each other and they're like, yeah, I don't. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess. I mean, like they are two of the most masculine Like very, very, they're very nice, but very masculine people. So we all go back to our apartment and we're chatting normally on the way back. And like, we're kind of joke flirting about it. We get back, we have some drinks, and I'm the insecure. I'm like, all right, guys, well, let's go over there. Mind you, the apartment has no actual walls, it's just sliding panels, right? So there's no
Yeah.
everything can be heard from everywhere. So we all go around her, she gets on her knees, I take out my dick. They both look at me and go, yeah, no, we're gonna wait. Literally, and I'm like, okay. And they decide the best way to do it is if she takes one, no joke, this was a discussion, take each one of us into one of these sliding panel rooms, sucked each of them off, and then like, because they didn't want to, be naked in front of each
Yeah,
other.
that's also such a like just a wholesome way of like, oh, we can't see each other naked, so we just have to go into the other room.
The panel room, because they just can't see another dick. And I'm like, all right,
Oh
cool.
my god, that's so funny. That's
Best part. So I had to sit out there with the one who was not currently getting sucked off at the time. Both of them decided to talk about sports. I
of course.
know nothing about sports. I said this to both of them. I said, I'm not really into sports. Both of them continued to talk to me
Do
about
you
sports.
remember what they were talking about specifically? I need to know what West Michigan sports this has to do with.
Wish I did. I know it was Michigan State something. I know it was football
Okay.
something. I know it, and I remember at some point thinking, oh wow, this person really needs to talk about sports right now, because you can clearly hear the other dude coming in the background. Like
yeah,
there's in the background.
Yeah, I mean, it's a serious thing there. Like that's what people are committed about.
Yep.
Like there's sexual repression, and then being like, well, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh needs his job fired. And I'm like, I completely agree. Like, but I just don't try to have those two things that close.
I try not to have the second one as much as possible. I try to stay away from sports in every way human and us, because it's terrible. Don't know.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who got born into the whole Michigan football thing, and it's
oh no, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so depressing. I love it so much. But yeah, this last week was hard. Like, I know it's always going to happen. It's like it's the closest thing I feel like I had to religion in my family, because we like got together like as the holidays for the games and stuff. So yeah,
Man,
it's like
is that a Dyson vacuum on your back wall?
It is actually a Dyson vacuum. We actually have a very nice stand for it.
I mean, I very much I wanted to comment on that earlier, but I also felt that would just make a flawless segue.
You are the only person who actually mentioned the Dyson vacuum in this whole season. So,
dude, I've been looking at vacuums to buy, and I'm like, I will never be able to justify putting the money into a Dyson vacuum because they're stupid expensive. I don't know if they are there, but here it's like 400 fucking euros, and I want one so bad. Don't get me wrong, I would buy one in a heartbeat. I just got these. Hold on. I'll show you what I spent my money on. I spent my money on these stupid expensive cats.
Oh my god, your cat is adorable.
I know. This is HR Puffin stuff.
I literally just have a cat that just like came out of like a trash bin and like he was yelling at my door.
Hold on, I want to show you this.
Wow.
Oh, come here, little gubber.
These are some very cute, very fancy German looking cats.
This is the flu.
We don't have that fancy of cats in Michigan, I feel like. How are her eyes like that? That's unreal.
They don't have any gender because cats don't need gender.
Wow.
They are a ragdoll, and ragdolls are perfect because they have no needs in life. They're just flat.
That's so cute. Yeah, I just have a calico cat that screams at everyone. Like that's her one ability. It's just like screaming.
Did you rescue her?
She just came to my door when I was like in 8th grade, just screaming at us until we were like, oh, we have a cat now. And that's all like she kind of does now too. So yeah. Basically. But yeah, so what made you move to Berlin from Grand Rapids? Because it sounds like I mean, we were both making like good money living in Grand Rapids. For me, I was just like, okay, I need more opportunities than
For me, it was
in
with the
Grand
camming. It
Rapids.
was I was camming with a partner, and she was, camming as a guy with a penis is not nearly as lucrative as
I would assume.
camming. The straight white male money doesn't flow that much there. It's but so
The
I was
one
like,
field, the one field where it doesn't work out for being a white male.
love it. Absolutely. I have chosen the one field where all of my privileges, or well, not all of them, some of them are neutralized. But no, so I was like, I was really getting good at the production value, but also I realized that like I wasn't really doing anything on my own. I was in porn, but I wasn't
Mhm.
doing my own thing. So I'm like, I want to go somewhere where I can really make movies, where I can do the things I want to do. And it was around this time, I don't know about you, but I got into porn in this like incredibly gross and masculine and fucking exploitative way. I was working at my first job was working at a sex toy store, sex toy chain in
Okay.
northern Michigan. And I worked for this guy who wanted to start his own porn company he was a 45-year-old dude, wanted to start a porn company with his 18-year-old girlfriend
Oh my
as the
God.
star. And as I responded to a
Yikes.
Craigslist ad for this thing. And
Wow.
it was exactly as bad as you like, worse than you think it could be. And I was 18, and that was my first introduction to porn. Was just like one of the ways that we would get male performers, you want to call them that,
Yeah.
is he put up black and white printed out signs on all the sex toy stores with a picture of her with the statement underneath it: "Want to fuck this? Call this number." And that's how we got male talent. It
Oh
was
my God.
the one
That is
time
the
somebody
worst.
it was so bad. The one time some guy showed up, like it was he showed up to the hotel room. The producer, who's the boyfriend, didn't tell him he's the boyfriend. So as soon as the guy finds out he's the boyfriend, he's like nervous. And instead of like, I don't know, just trying to make the guy feel a little bit more comfortable, the producer goes, "What, is that a fucking problem? Is she not hot enough?" So
Oh
the
my
guy,
God.
they had brought a full bar with them for this dude for this two-person shoot, and the guy proceeds to drink an entire bottle of Captain Morgan within 15 minutes and tries to do the scene soft as shit,
Nope.
like completely soft. And me as an 18-year-old with no zero, like literally zero experience in the world, felt
Mhm.
bad for this like at least 55-year-old dude. And I'm like, hey man, it's okay, it's fine.
Yeah, like it's like having like a straight up like call up for like a local tryout for like a professional sports team and be like, yeah, just like go in there, see what you can do. And then when they fail, you're like, oh, what do you mean? She not hot enough? Like, what the fuck? That would be like, what? You
Oh,
can't make a basket? What the fuck's wrong with you?
what, you haven't practiced? Dude, get the fuck up. Everybody laughed at this guy. He's ridiculous,
Right?
right? So then the guy, like, he somehow like jimmied his penis inside of her, and we shot a god awful scene. And I was like, don't get me wrong, the scene was very well filmed, but all I remember is him like literally after drinking an entire fifth of Captain Morgan, drive like pulling out of that hotel in his truck at like 70 miles per hour, and me just
He
being like, yeah, this is fine. Yep, okay,
uh
this guy's responsible. He knows what he's doing, because like I didn't know any fucking better.
truly, like in Michigan, everyone fucking drinks and drives, and it's a real
I hate
fucking
it. I
issue.
hate it. I
It's
hate it so
so
much.
not safe.
It's so unfortunate when I go back and hang out with friends, and like I'm like, all right, guys, who's gonna sober drive? Like, no one.
Yeah, right.
It's like
Everyone's like, what do you mean? Stop being a little bitch.
it's so upsetting, honestly. Is it the same way in Cali? Like, do you guys, or is it a
No,
little bit
not at
more?
all. I think it's simply a
Good,
Grand
good.
Rapids thing because everyone's like, well, there's like barely any cars on the road, and like there's all these like justifications. It's like, well, there's so many breweries. How are you supposed to get in between them?
Well, if they didn't want us drunk driving, they wouldn't put up so many beer places.
Right?
I had friends that would like do drunk driving games at stop signs and tell me about them in bars. And like, man, it's not okay. It's just not okay.
In some ways, Grand Rapids is a whole different fucking universe because there's so many people doing so much reckless stuff, and you're just like, This doesn't happen in other places, or like the amount of like people going out to drink and taking like pain pills with it and just being like, oh yeah, I just take some Vicodin.
Or the fucking, I went back for a wedding in Traverse City, and everybody is just like popping Xanax tabs. They're telling me about all this.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
it's a
fun,
thing.
friend. I popped like 5 Xanax, then got really drunk, and then I woke up with all my silverware arranged nicely on my front yard, and turned out that I'd been arrested by the neighbors. Funny.
It's
Like,
true. Like it's everywhere. Like I've had friends get arrested for Xanax and shit, for fake Xanax in Grand Rapids. Like it, I don't know. I left before like Coke got there, but I feel like it got really bad shortly after.
I didn't do the only drugs I did in Grand Rapids were mushrooms that I grew myself and weed, because like honestly doing drugs in the US is just not fucking worth it, especially in Michigan, where they have the only drug charge I've ever had was driving while weed was legal in Michigan, right? It was at least legal in Grand Rapids. I was at a music festival driving back up to Traverse City, got stopped by Officer Friendly in some small podunk town. He's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, hey there, you got any weed on you?" And me thinking it's completely legal, because that's what I thought. Go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I've got some crumbs. Motherfucker gave me a misdemeanor for crumbs. Like the year before it was
Wow.
fully. I I don't know, man. Like the willingness and interest the cops have in prosecuting small drug charges in,
Hmm.
okay, for example, here I just found this in my records, right? When I first moved to Berlin, I got caught with again, me being a dumbass, I got caught with one ecstasy pill because
Oh yeah.
cops asked me coming out of a club with eyeballs like this, do you have any drugs on you? And I go, yeah. But they sent me, so like, they didn't charge me anything. They just sent me this really nice paper that asks, um, I either did this thing or didn't. The dealer who gave me this drug is named so and so. They have like a fill-in form, right?
Oh wow.
I know him personally. I know him from other people. I'd probably recognize him at a stop sign or like a stoplight. Um, are there any other descriptions of the dealer? Anything else you'd like to explain about this potential charge? We're not charging you. Would you just like to explain about it? And
We just want
that's
you to
the
fill out a
general
questionnaire.
questionnaire for them not charging me with drug possession. This is why I love Berlin, because it's just nobody gives a shit here. Even the
Yeah.
cops, when I told them I have a pill, they look at me there, and the guy's like, "Did you really have to say yes?" No joke. It's just like, fuck. Now we got to fill out paperwork.
Yeah, I feel like both Berlin and Amsterdam are just so that way with drugs, where it's just like so open and free. Like there's times during the year in Amsterdam where you can have up to like a gram of coke on you during like festivals and stuff, where it's just like, oh yeah, it's totally fine. We just are lenient during that amount of time. It's just so different than what you would ever assume
Which
in the
is,
United States.
you've lived in Amsterdam, right?
No, I've only lived in California and
Oh,
Holland.
okay.
I've
I
worked a
thought you
lot
lived
there
in.
though.
Okay, you should come move to Europe for a bit. You would
That
absolutely like.
was the plan before the pandemic. My partner also works
I
for a
remember this.
company that
Yeah.
was based in Amsterdam, and we're like, oh, we'll move there for 6 months. And then obviously the pandemic happened. They left that company. So I don't
Right.
know.
Right. Right. Right.
Maybe eventually, but I'm really happy I got to shoot a film in Amsterdam right before the pandemic. So
What was the film?
it's called From Holland with Love. It actually got nominated for a Fleshbot
Confidence.
Award. Yeah.
No shit. Oh man,
Yeah.
that's
For
dope.
best
You
scene,
are
which is wild.
you are always getting nominated for awards. I am actually intensely impressed by that. Like you are always getting nominated for some award or another. It's way cool.
It's see, my problem was not until the pandemic happened, I had no work-life balance. So my whole issue at the time was, okay, I got nominated for this. Okay, I need to work harder so I don't lose this. And that was my mindset for about 6 years until the last 2 years where now I can actually enjoy the shit.
Right.
But truly, like ever since fucking Mystic, I was just in a constant thing of, okay, what's the next movie? What's the next movie? Is this gonna get nominated for this? This could be nominated for this category. Is it gonna happen? Okay, if it does, I'm just living up to expectations. If it doesn't, what the fuck am I doing wrong? What's wrong with you?
Because this is your
I
what
needed the pandemic to stop all that, because
do
now
you think that
like I'm at home. Like, even if I get into a festival or get an AVN nomination, I'm still going to go about the rest of my day, you know?
Do you think a lot of that's mental health stuff, or do you think that's like career wise stuff, like the undue pressure of I always need to be better, or do you think it's like how the career, like this career specifically, does that to you?
Um, my problem was I had a lot of unresolved mental health stuff. Some of it came from this industry as well as like when I dealt with like all the turf harassment and shit. So my issue was instead of being like, oh, I need to go to therapy, I need to get help, I need to figure out tools to manage this. I was like, I don't need that. If I just pour it all back into my art, that's where I'm going to see like success and everything. So I made a lot of cool movies and stuff, but I was just really depressed and hated everything until I started like going to therapy and being like, oh, it's not just me. And yeah, I like found out more about my family's like history and mental health and realizing I'm from the most depressed city in the country. Also been like, oh, it's not just me. So I
I
don't feel
know that
like
vibe.
porn caused it. I think I was just using it as like a coping mechanism.
I think you're right. It's like anything that you do, any career, if you have that mindset of like, I need to be the best, I can never be good enough because I'm not good enough, therefore I need to,
Yeah.
right? You're going to find that vibe in anything until you are able to break out and go, no, actually, I'm pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah. That's literally what it is. And then everything I feel like has been better since, and I can actually enjoy this shit. But I think you can definitely get into that mindset of just being like, oh my God, I have to live up to these expectations. Especially when I moved to the Bay in Grand Rapids, no one gave a fuck about camming. No one gave a fuck about that. But when I moved here, all these people started treating me all different and being like, oh, you're going to do this, this, and this. And I'm just like, I just got off the plane like 3 weeks ago, you know?
What do you mean by this, and this? Did they tell you as in like producers or directors are telling you you're going to be doing these things that you didn't want to do? Or is it people just assuming, making
Making
assumptions about
assumptions
you?
that, oh, you're going to have all the success. And I had no idea about that moving here because in
Gotcha.
Grand Rapids, there's no one camming. There's like 5 people I know. There's no like external pressure of being like, oh, you're going to be a thing and you need to know what's coming. And I
There's
just
no role
truly
models. Yeah.
didn't because, yeah, you just don't have that there. But here, I moved here when it was like the peak of the SF porn scene. So I kind of just
Right.
like walked into it. A good
Isn't the
Grand
best.
Rapids comparison I like to compare it to is Law Dispute. Law Dispute was not the best band at the time. They were just young and got in at the right time when there was a huge scene in Grand Rapids with bands like Victor Fix the Sun, Still Remains. That's what made them be able to become a bigger thing. And I think it's just a lot about the timing and doing the right thing at the right time.
I think so much of it is luck, and so much of it is you're right. You're right. Let me rephrase that. It's not luck. It's doing the right thing at the right time. You have to
Mhm.
recognize the right time and be able to do the right thing and know what will suit that moment. And that does in of itself take a good amount of skill.
Yeah,
I think that's what's
it's
really differentiates people who are successful in a certain career versus people that aren't, is because you need to be really dedicated to learning and understanding what will make you successful at that, and then finding the right time to do it. Like when I was in Grand Rapids, I got really, well, let's say lucky. I spent the majority of my time when I wasn't camming on Tumblr or
yeah.
researching new porn directors, performers. And the first person who really, like, honest to God, the person who got me on this track that I am now is probably Ashley Vex, because when I was on
Oh
back in
yeah.
the perfect days of Tumblr, I like Vex was the first person I followed whose work I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. This is exactly what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
And that got me into this whole world that then introduced me to X Confessions back in like the early days of X Confessions,
Mhm.
and like all the people that I work with now in Berlin, like this entire crew. That I was
Mhm.
like, this is what I want to be doing, and it took me finding that, realizing that that's what I want to be doing, and then taking the steps to end up in the city where that's possible. Because that's basically the entire reason I moved to Berlin. I had no idea about the party scene. I had no idea about the drug scene, anything.
Mhm.
I was just like, this is where the people who are making the porn
Yeah, this is where porn
that I went,
is.
yep.
Yeah,
And I was,
just
oh,
same story, different city, basically, where I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
people in SF are doing this. I don't know much about San Francisco. I didn't even know what the Bay Area was when I first went out here, to be honest. I'm like, somewhere out there, there is a thing. It sounds like that's a lot of your story from Berlin. And I think particularly being from such a small town, I feel like I reached my expectations so early because my expectations were so low because you're from such a small city. Like, I'm not trying to go back to sports analogies that much, but like
oh God,
being
please
from a
don't. No.
small town,
Okay, yes.
it's all these minor league sports teams. So what your like kind of view on the cap of how to be successful, it's on that. It's like, oh, we have like an AHL team, like the Griffins. And like I grew up like, wow, it would be really great to be like on a platform that large in the porn industry or something like that.
Honestly,
You get what I'm saying? Like being a
I do.
second
Yeah,
tier performer. And then when all this real stuff happened, I was basically like without goals for a minute, just being like, what do I do now? Like my 5-year goal was to get one AVN nomination. And now it's just like I got that after 2. And it's just like you're really searching for what to do.
that was the wildest moment for me when I got the actual like. The, nobody in Berlin really knows the AVNs. Can
Yeah.
you back me up? The AVNs are a big fucking deal, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's truly
it's
the
a
Olympics.
big deal.
It's like the Olympics of fucking porn. It's truly the whole fucking globe. You have people come in from Asia. You have people come in from South America. You have people all over the United States, all over Canada, all over Europe. It's Australia. It's truly global. It's
Thank you.
takes over all of Las Vegas for an entire week.
I honestly, I was both really sad and really relieved that I didn't end up going when I got nominated because like it was holy shit. It changed my entire view of myself and everything because I was
Mhm.
like, I know the AVNs as this big thing, and here I am getting nominated for best feature. My film got nominated for best feature, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, wild. I really want to go and experience that at some point, but I also think that if I would have gone when at that time, I would have had a mental breakdown because going to Las Vegas alone for the first time with not much money to spend, oh dear God, I would have absolutely
Oh,
just couldn't have handled.
but that's what happens at this award show because it's other awards, they're fun and all, like, but those aren't the things that really will define your career. Winning an AVN will
Yeah,
define your career. And there's
you think
not many
so?
jobs in the world that you can have one night kind of change the narrative of your career. And I think there's so much pressure around that. Even if you're like, oh, well, I'm just going, I don't think I'm going to win. It's still there though. And it's still in that room and there's still people having those feelings. And it's just like, yeah, I think it's a really unique thing because as a performer, if you do win an AVN for the rest of your career, you're gonna be the AVN award winning, blah, 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 blah. You know?
Like it really is something that's see. This is one thing that I would really love to experience with the California porn scene because here, like you said earlier, like it's Berlin is a city where you have a lot of people doing it just for the art. That's great and all, but also
Mhm.
that means you have a lot of people who aren't are kind of like it's not career style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's people who do sex work, just not for the sense of like this is going to be my life. It's not going to be my
Yeah.
thing. And I really want to be around a bigger community of people who this is their life, their entire life's goal and passion is producing sexual content or changing the narrative on how sex and porn are viewed. Like that sounds so fucking cool.
Yeah. I think the best bet in the United States right now is probably Vegas because it's a huge content trade hub right now. So you just have thousands of performers living there constantly shooting content trade nearly every day. There's some drawbacks. There's people faking STI tests, which is really, really
Oof,
sketchy,
oof.
obviously. But at the same time, it's getting these studios out of it and essentially just having it be performers controlling their own careers and their own content. LA is still definitely still on the studio model. There's still some content trade that happens. And then in SF, it's pretty much dead. There's maybe a handful of performers left here.
Really?
Even before the pandemic, yeah. Kind of what happened, I would say probably in like 2006, 2000, I mean 2017. A lot of the people who are big names here are going overseas to do all this stuff. Like there was a
Okay.
long time where I didn't shoot in the Bay at all, where I'm like, oh, I shot a movie in Berlin, I shot a movie in Amsterdam or London or wherever. where there's just not that much porn being made here. I think the Armory closing was a really big deal and a lot of people moved.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a couple of people moved who used to work with King.com, moved over to Berlin now and they are doing full time working with different porn sites
Yeah.
here in Berlin, which makes me super happy that they're able to do that here. It gives me hope for the Berlin porn scene, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Berlin has the most potential of any porn scene in the world right now, and I think there's the most energy there. It's just I don't know how much of the pandemic killed off that energy.
I think the energy is there. I think it's the ability to form ourselves into something that would. I really hate that if I like one of my goals is to start a porn site at some point, right? And be able to producing my own porn the way I want to see it. And I know at some point I'm going to have to suck so much straight white cock because that's where the money is coming from in porn. And that's what I think upsets the entire model of capitalism is that we need to you have so many really, really creative people with really amazing ideas for indie movies, indie porn in Berlin that aren't financially viable because they don't go along with the societal norms of where money has been collected due to these societal norms. And I'm one of the biggest things I'm trying to find out or trying to like slowly figure out is how to have that money trickle to us, right? In a way that allows us to still produce porn in the way that we want to, going by the same values that we want to, without selling out completely, right? But also, I feel like there's got to be a certain level of selling out that's necessary. I don't know. I go back and forth on this one all the time.
Yeah, I think it's a hard medium, but I also feel like, I think it's the whole industry behind it. That's the thing I've learned, I think, the most about doing this podcast and talking to so many people around the world. Like, porn is such a pure medium if you take it as just a medium. It's just every single country has this whole system behind it and how it works and who gets paid and how they get paid. And I feel like it just varies so much from country to country. And I don't really know what the solution is, honestly. I think it's just gonna be so much about just continuing
trial and error, right?
Making shit. That's kind of where I feel. But I have two more questions for you. I don't want to keep you all day. So you've obviously accomplished a lot in your career that you probably didn't see coming, like the AVN nomination. Is there anything else that's like on your list of things you want to accomplish before you're done with porn?
Absolutely. Like I said, I really want to start my own website. And right now, my current plan, here's my current plan, like my big accomplishment that I want to do is I really want to help people like myself. Like I, as a formerly super conservative, raised, intensely masculine person who was kind of brought around through the help of a lot of people and a lot of people giving their time and energy to proper thinking, to being less toxically masculine than before. I really want to do something that helps people be less harmful to others, to be less toxic, to really just fuck with the entirety of toxic masculinity. That's goal number one. Personal goal number two is I want to start a website that funds a super fun sex bar here in Berlin. And let me tell you about the sex bar. It's going to
Does it exist already? Or are you going to make the bar? Oh, wow.
This
Very Grand Rapids moving to another city and be like, I'm opening a bar.
Absolutely. Because if there's two things I know, it's beer and it's fucking. So I'm going to have a bar with a porn site ran out of it. I want the entire bar to be made of dildos. I want to have weekly cam girl performances on stage that people can watch. It will be sex worker heaven. It will probably only be visited by creepy men who I have to keep under the eye of security because that's the life we live. But fuck yeah, this bar is gonna be great.
That's so cool. That's the best answer anyone's given me, where they're like, I'm opening a sex bar made of dildos. I love that. So I have one final question.
Okay.
This is the one I ask everyone. This is the most kind of out there question. If you could wake up tomorrow and one thing in porn could magically be changed, what would it be?
I'd have 3 cats.
In porn.
Oh, that still doesn't count?
No. Wait, what do you mean? I want another cat.
Yeah, I don't want to pay for it. It's supposed to give me a cat. That's in porn. If I could wake up tomorrow, honestly, if I could wake up tomorrow and something would
Yeah.
be changed, it would be that someone had called me in the night and said, "Hey, that idea you have for a porn site, I'm going to fund that. And
Mhm.
I agree with your morals. I agree with what you want to do. I'm on board. I don't have any questions. Here's the money. Make your dream a reality."
Yeah,
That would be
that's the dream email to get. I'm waiting for
right.
that every day too. Well,
Oh,
thank
that's
you so much for coming on the pod. I had so much fun talking to you, and I think we provided so much Grand Rapids content. We didn't talk about Meyer though, which is really sad.
we'll get there. We'll get there. We both
Yeah,
know it
yeah,
exists.
yeah.
Chelsea,
I talked about it on the
what
last podcast, so I think people should know. But
did you talk about Meyer with?
um, it's actually Esperanza del Horno from the Netherlands. They were talking about how they can't find Dutch cheese here, and I'm like, oh no! Like you go to Meyer,
And
there's
you send
so
them to
much
Meyer
Dutch
in
Gouda
Michigan.
like from the Netherlands. And I'm like, yeah, I have a bunch. Like, my mom was just here, so she brought a bunch of Dutch stuff back. So yeah, I was talking about Myers being like, it's open all the time. It has everything. You can buy tires, you can buy paint, you can buy groceries, you can buy CDs, you can buy camping equipment.
Sharing the best parts of Midwest culture with our European friends.
Yeah.
Emissary, Michigan emissary, right here.
Yeah. Well, is there anything anywhere people can find you and some plugs you want to do before we wrap it up?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter at Hunter S. Johnson X. Also, same on Instagram, Hunter S. Johnson X. I'm going to be performing in a Berlin show called Stripper Wars in the upcoming days. Anybody who's in Berlin, please get some tickets to Stripper Wars. It's super fun. A bunch of strippers beating the shit out of each other.
That's so
And
badass.
it's so great. It's so my character is going to be called Tucker Chad Brockman, and I am going to be having the shit beat out of me as the emissary, as the perfect masculine character. So come see Stripper Wars. Watch my new Ex Confession film when it comes out. Hold the tip. And Chelsea, thank you so much. This is
Yeah, thank
like
you.
even just on like just to talk to you, it's been great. Thanks so much for calling me. It's been
Totally.
super
This
fun.
is half the reason I have this podcast, just so I can talk to people that are my performer friends who we usually don't get an hour to sit down and just like talk about shit. So
No, or it's like super high pressure, like we're at some event and we have to,
yeah.
it's like networking, right? Like this is nice. Yeah. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, definitely. Hope to have you on again soon in the future. And I guess this is a wrap for season 1. So I'm so happy you're in my last podcast for this. Have a nice rest of your day. Enjoy, everyone.